We are back this week with Henry from Allego. So, Henry, do you want to do a very quick intro to what you do at Allego?
Yeah, of course. So I'm an SDR at Allego. Recently just been promoted to SDR II. I've been here sort of around just over 2 years now. And sort of where Allego help people, we help sales, enablement, and marketing. And ultimately, what we do is help those sales teams to centralize all of their training and content all in one place, whilst giving managers visibility into rep behavior change so they can maximize the impact of their programs.
Amazing. So, let's just go straight into it. Obviously, with this podcast, we're trying to just help out other SDRs, share some tips from people who are smashing it in a role. Obviously, you've just been promoted, so you're doing something right. In terms of just sort of coming out of Q1 now, how's it been? What's been working for you in terms of channels you're seeing most success from at the moment?
Yeah, just coming out of Q1, so Q1 was really, really good for me. I think I finished 130% to target, which was pretty awesome. Um, I think what's really helped from my perspective this year is just that double down on social selling, selling a lot through LinkedIn, keeping an eye on different Slack groups of different things that they're going to post in there around sort of enablement, what they're looking for. Um, I'm really just refining what I'm saying when I'm on the phone. I think cold calling is still very much alive and kicking, but it's just how you do it. Make sure that you're being coached as regularly as possible, and just taking all of that on board and actually applying it. You can be as coached as many times as possible, but unless you actually apply it, then it's pretty pointless, isn't it?
Nice. Cool. So, two key areas there, I guess, the social selling aspect and the cold calling.
Mm.
Go into a few questions on both of them, starting with social selling. Oh, you've got a big profile, and we'll go into more your general advice around that later. But when you're talking about being in Slack channels, I hear it a lot about people saying you should be doing it, but not much of how it actually looks like. So, do you have like a sort of run of the mill example you could share of a time you've seen that and it's actually worked and what your outreach looks like as a result of something you saw?
Yeah, so you'll see someone. So last month, I saw someone post in the Sales Enablement Collective Slack channel. Obviously, I'm in Sales Enablement Slack channels, um, but they posted around that they're looking for a new content management system. Um, we had a really nice guy that was in there that gave, who's an Allego customer, who gave us as a sort of, you need to check out Allego. Um, I dropped them an email because that's all the contact information I had for them, but reference their post. Sometimes I'll actually try and message them on Slack within that channel, but I don't tend to actually go into the post and outwardly say, "Oh, hey, talk to me." One, because I think it sort of attracts all your competitors. But two, obviously those Slack channels aren't designed for that. They're not designed for you to sell, pitch your product. And you don't want to get that risk of just getting booted out the Slack channel.
100%. Do you have an example of the type, like what you actually say in the email when you're referencing that?
So for that one, for example, I just put looking for a CMS. So looking for a CMS platform. Reference that I'd seen her message within that Sales Enablement Collective Slack group. Just said, saw the person that commented who's an Allego customer referenced us. Did you want to check it out? No big decisions at that point. Yeah, so she come back to me pretty straight away. And yeah, meeting in the book.
Awesome. If only they were all that quick, right?
it, and easy. I think email's the hardest channel to get a response out of. But when you've got something like that, it's 10 times easier. It cuts through a lot of noise.
Yeah, well, I mean, you were sort of ticking all the boxes, right? You saw that instant needs. You got the referral from someone in the
Mm.
community, so you had a lot to be going with. So switching over to obviously said cold calling is still alive and well, and that's what we do a lot of content on, trying to help people get better at cold calling because it's alive and well, but it's still bloody hard, right? So,
Mm.
in terms of your success from cold calling, what is your approach to it? Is it like starting off? How many are you trying to do a day? Do you have a set number? Do you always dedicate a set time of day to be doing it? What's your just general approach to cold calling? And then we could go from there.
Yeah. It, so I work a couple of different verticals. I work tech, and I also work in sort of life sciences. Um, I'll tend to try and do around 50 calls a day. Now, if certain things stop me, if I say book two or three meetings and that sort of stops me in those time blocks, I'm really quite regimented when it comes to time blocks.
Mm.
So I want to ring sales leaders within tech between two and three. And I've got 40 people in that sequence, for example, that I'll go and dial, and I want to try and get through that 40. But if I'm having 5 or 6 conversations in that time, then I'm not going to necessarily get through that.
Sure.
So I'm going to try and stick to my time blocks as that they're the only thing that's quite rigid within my day of how I set out my week. Um, because otherwise, then I fall behind on everything and don't get as much done in the long term as sort of what I want to do. Um, and yeah, I think my sort of approach to cold calling. Um, I want to try and cover sort of all the ICPs that we do, but I also want to make sure that I'm ringing in the morning and in the afternoon. I can also target the US. Um, so I want to try and get in at least 30, 40 dials in a week into the US. There's not always, because we're mainly EMEA based.
Mm.
It's a lot of EMEA based prospects. So it's about 20% of that prospecting is done into the US. But I like to try and find a nice split between the two verticals that I work. So probably 60% tech, 40% life science.
Nice. And is cold calling normally your first point of outreach, or are you leading with something else first? Try warm up a bit.
Cold calling is my preferred method.
Yeah.
If they've got a number, then I'll try and ring them. That's half the battle, right? If what contact details do you have for them? There's more and more people that I've noticed this year that like to opt out of things like Cognism and Zoom Info, um, which doesn't help me. Helps them not getting so many calls, but it doesn't always help me. So I think I'll try and cycle through that prospect. If I've phoned them 10 times in a month, for example, I'll then look to drip feed a few emails in. Always look to try and connect on LinkedIn in my first instance. After that first call, try and it's a bit rogue because not many people do it, but I always try and leave a voicemail in on that first call, just because I'll reference at the end of that voicemail, if now's not a good time to speak, I've shot you across a LinkedIn connection request. My name's Henry Clayton. You'll see it pop up in there. Feel free to drop me a message if what I've said is relevant and you want me to call back at a better time. So it's just like that additional touch point, and it's that familiarity, really.
Yeah, I always see people saying not to leave voicemails, and now I'm more on the other side of getting a lot of cold calls. I think voicemails are so underused because, like, when you're working, you miss however many calls, right? It's just normal
Mm,
that you're not going to answer every one.
mm,
But the ones where people are actually leaving voicemails, then I sort of know when the number's ringing what it's about, which I guess can be a bad thing as well if someone's going to ignore it completely. But
mm,
I always find I answer the second call more once I've seen a voicemail from the first time.
mm. Yeah, I've had people answer because they've listened to my voicemail and they've wait. It's weird. People wait for you to ring back. They don't
Yeah.
go, "Oh, that's really piqued my interest. I'm going to ring this guy back." They go, "No, he's rang me once. He's going to ring me again." Um, but and then other times people have just accepted my connection request on LinkedIn and say, "Just listen to your voicemail," and then either give me a time for me to ring them back, explain a bit more, because it's quite vague. I want to. It's almost like a tease. I
Mm.
want to tease sort of a little bit of what we can do, a little bit of how we can help, but I want to have that sense of like mystique's probably the wrong word, but just general like, oh, I don't know if it could be relevant, but it would be relevant enough for me to have a 5 minute conversation on the phone about it.
So, do you have an example of how you can? like how you actually say that in a voicemail to try keep that little bit of mystique, as you put it.
Yeah, I think so. I try and keep it under 45 seconds because I think I know on my phone, I get you've been left a voicemail and it'll tell me how long it is. Like one of my mates accidentally pocket dialed me the other day and left me a 5.5 minute voicemail.
Nice.
And I thought, there's no way if he's actually talking, there's no way I want to listen to that. But I think you just introduce yourself. That's what I tend to do. I introduce myself. Allude to the fact that we've not spoken before, and then say reason why I'm looking to speak with you is XYZ of like a problem that we solve, just really high level. it, it's a problem that we help completely eradicate. If it's of interest, I've shot you a LinkedIn connection request, and that's how it tends to go, really.
Yeah, that's a really nice piece of advice and just a good general tip around that. So, shifting topics slightly, and you have taken up a new project, I guess you call it, with the skills coaching.
Mm.
Do you want to just run through quickly what exactly that entails?
Yeah, definitely. So it's sort of a little side role as a trainer at Skills. It's headed up by a guy called George Storm. George, weirdly enough, I in his last role, I booked him booked him in for a meeting, which is quite nice how it's all gone full circle. But it also says for like an SDR perspective, is just those people that you book meetings with don't just drop them straight away after you book a meeting. But basically, Skills is it's a skills and development platform where you can subscribe and see different courses from a range of different trainers. And sort of where I come in is I'm focusing on the SDR role. Um, and what I'll look to do is record loads of pieces of content in the platform, ranging from sort of cold calling, emails, virtual selling, there's some weird and wacky prospecting ideas of things that I've tried or things that my colleagues have tried or things that are in my head that I haven't done yet. But also things like sales tools, how you can use them, what sort of free ones are out there that you can get best use out of. Um, and also, one big thing for me is sort of a day in the life of an SDR or a week in the life, how you should plan your week and month. And the one big thing for me is like mindset of how to get your mindset on track. I think SDR role is full of lows, almost more so than highs. You know, it's not plain sailing by any stretch. And I think you can really get yourself stuck in the weeds in your own head of if it gets to Thursday afternoon, you've got no meetings on the board, you could quite easily go into Friday with such a negative mindset and just how to slip, flip that from a negative to a positive, basically.
Yeah, awesome. So you mentioned, I've said like the day in the life of SDR, week in the life is important to you. You've mentioned how regimented you have time blocks. So obviously your, I guess, processes and approach to the role are things you're very passionate about. So if we go into that a bit more and almost give a trailer to the course, what is the what are your top tips? Like, what are you actually covering in that session? Which are like the most important things for SDRs to keep a positive mindset? How do they do that, and how do you think people should just be approaching their day?
Yeah, I think, time blocks is a big thing for me. And I think you can get, if you get 2, 3 weeks into the month and you're not even halfway to your number, you can spend a whole lunchtime, for example. You can work for your lunch. You can work 2 hours extra in an evening and you think it's a really good thing to do. But I think taking a break and just assessing where you're going, where you're falling down. There's a lot of bit around sort of reflection. I'm a big thing on reflecting on my own calls, but also my own outreach and how I'm approaching each and every day. I used to be in the realm of if I'm in that position where I'm 2, 3 weeks into the month and I'm more than halfway away from my number, I chase. Everything sounds a bit beggy. Everything sounds a bit salesy. And then I wonder when I get to the start of the new month why I've not booked no meetings for a week and a half. Because if I go through all my outreach and all my cold calls, I might as well just be saying that I'm begging for a meeting. And I think sort of that part of the course is just making sure you're sticking to what that good actually looks like of the best version of you.
Hmm. Nice. And You just mentioned as well reflecting on your actual cold calls, and I think everyone we spoke to who is performing well are actively listening back to their calls, which can be a pretty horrible thing to do, like listening to yourself and thinking, "Why did I just say that?" But what like, when you're doing that session, actually looking back at your own calls, what is your mindset around that? What are you thinking? Are you trying to focus on particular areas? Do you always do it with your coach, or is it on your own?
It's a mixture of who I do it with. So I've got my own sort of SDR team lead, which is Jacob Partington. He's great. He'll listen to pretty much every call that pulls through into Allego and give feedback, which I think is brilliant.
Mm,
But I'll also shoot some off to peers. I know Chris Russell, I think, has
yeah,
been on here. I've sent him 2 calls already this morning of this new little talk track that we've been trying together, just to see how he thinks it's working, and anything he can change. And I also have a separate coach from my sales coach, which is Neil Buan. Apologies, Neil, if I butchered your last name. But I will also look to share with him as well. But I think listening back to your own calls is really important. I try and just keep it to the same speed. Try and write down some different bits of, I could have done that a bit better. I could have done this a bit better. But I think listening to your colleagues' cold calls as well is just as important as listening to your own, because there could be ways that you can improve that you don't even realize.
nice. And going a bit deeper into what you mentioned with Chris, obviously he's been on the pod, so he gave some awesome advice. Really great guy. You talked about like building that talk track together, and I guess quite a lot of SDRs. Some do that, especially if you're in a great team. There's a lot of cooperation, but some people might feel a bit alone almost in like their activities. How do you actually go about that in terms of working with Chris and building out a talk track together? Is it just sort of reflecting on what's working for both of you? Is it like an active thing you do on a regular basis?
I think Chris and I just bounce regular ideas off each other,
Yeah.
because I'll sit there and go, like, is this gonna work? And Chris is like my soundboard. So I go, Chris, forgive me if I'm being absolutely mental, but do you think this will work? And he'll go, let's hop on a Zoom or let's have a quick chat about it. And then we'll go, we'll flesh it out a little bit and then go, yeah, this actually does sound like it could be something that works. And I think Chris, in the last year and a half, Chris joined Allego a year after me. And he's literally just been promoted this week to principal SDR. So he's absolutely flown, hit President's Club in the first year. And I think he's got a lot of knowledge stored in his brain that I just want to unpick all the time. So yeah, Chris may secretly deep down hate me a little bit because I bug him more than what he bugs me. But I think it's just really good to bounce ideas off. We have SDR coaching every week as well. So if we have an idea, we'll role play it out, or we'll say, does this sound like it could work? And then we'll just try it. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. If it does, brilliant. Then we can clip it, share it out to the rest of the team and go, this has worked really well for Chris and I. Might be worth taking a look and seeing how it fits into what you're doing.
Awesome. Yeah, it seems that you've got such good setup at Lego with actually the team and everyone helping each other and the amount of
Mm.
coaching you get, which is so cool.
Mm.
Just obviously looking at the clock, we've been talking for a while already now, so we'll
Mm.
switch on over to the final topic very briefly. But you are big on social media, like you said, you
Mm.
dedicate time to it in terms of posting every day. You've had one viral post which got 56,000 likes. Do you want to talk through that one very quickly? What that day was like?
That day was surreal. Um, I, it was just so weird. So how I created that post was, I was scrolling through Twitter in the morning, and because I follow a few like different football things on Twitter, loads of football stuff props up on my feed, and there was all these different things following that same part of the post, and then I just thought, I could change the last line to fit something. I went, what have I done on a cold call that's been quite funny? And I said, oh, I've said love you once. I used to say it in my old job in a contact center all the time. Normally by accident, depends if someone was shouting at me or not. I'd say love you, bye. But I just thought, yeah, took me 30 seconds to think of, and posted it. All these likes kept coming through, all these comments kept coming through, thinking, oh, this post could do quite well. I could get like 1,000 likes on this post. And then before you know it, by the end of the day, it's gone completely mental. Um, and my social battery was at about 0.1%. Just from seeing my phone, I think my phone was red hot by 5 o'clock. So the phone got switched off for a few hours to try and get me back into some form of actual reality.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, I can imagine you were the talk off the team for a little bit after that one.
Mm.
Going into more, you're obviously not every post you're going to do is get 56,000 likes, and to even chase
Thank
that
God.
would just be crazy, right? So, but you do post regularly, and like you said, social selling is a big win for you. I think a lot of SDRs struggle with actually attaching posting to seeing benefit in their day to day.
Hmm.
What do you actually see as the biggest benefit to your, I guess you call it the day job, from doing this posting, and like how are you leveraging that?
I think the biggest benefit for me, I've always been a big person to try and get my thoughts out um, somewhere. If I can get my thoughts out and share experiences of what I'm doing, it may help a couple of people. Sometimes I think like a third of my posts are me posting memes and me trying to be funny. But if I can make someone laugh as well, then I can tick that box as well. So if I can help people, make people laugh, or sometimes I tie it back to Allego and what we're doing, but that's like a rare occurrence. I'm not a big fan of all those posts of going, yeah, let's have a chat because we do X, Y, Z. I think so many salespeople fall into that trap where it is just a big salesy post. Nobody wants to really read that unless they're actually really interested in your product. But I think helps give you a bit of a personality. I've spoken to loads of different prospects who I've booked meetings with or had conversations with, and they now like my posts, engage with my content. I've been having a conversation with a guy all week, just chatting about loads of different stuff that he's doing with his team, and just real conversational. And I accidentally slipped into a couple of things that we do because it was the topic of conversation. And he's then sort of asked me for a chat and to delve into more about it. So I think just post. Don't worry about I think that social media age of what we're in is you post something on Instagram and people are there like, oh, it's only got 15 likes. My other post of my face got 50 likes. I might take it down. Like, doesn't really matter. Like, just post.
Yeah, I love it. And it must just be so much easier when you're having that first conversation because, like you said, you might send the LinkedIn request and they see, oh, this person's actually a normal human being, right? They're not
Mm.
going to try force everything down me. And even when I reached out to you to do this podcast, like I
Mm.
was able to look for your profile, saw your post, I already knew what the conversation was going to be like, right? Because
Mm.
you put yourself out there, and it just makes that first contact so much easier.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Like I posted the other day about me getting my head split open at football. Um, and I had the old like Terry Butcher thing around my head. And I had a couple people just like message me saying, "Oh, like hope you're all right. Like, what was the damage?" And I'm like, "Let's cut this big." Like, it's not. It looks so much worse than what it is. But I'm there like, yeah, you should see the other guy. But yeah, it helps just get a bit of personality out there, and I think sometimes that's what people lack a little bit on social media. You don't get to see behind the the front that they're trying to like portray to everyone.
Definitely. I love it. And I think we can wrap up there. Always ask the same question to finish up with, which is just, is there anyone else in your network, someone you follow on LinkedIn who think other people should be reaching out to and who we should get on this podcast as well?
Yeah, there's definitely one person I speak to her pretty much like nearly every day. it's Liv Rager at Conquest. She's an SDR there. She's really funny, really sound. Asked me for a bit of advice from time to time, which don't know why, but yeah, she's like my biggest supporter from afar, basically. So she'll ask me, how many meetings have you booked this week? And I'll tell her, and she'll be like, yeah, you go, Glen Coco. And I'm there like, yeah, cheers. That is the boost I needed today. But yeah, if you're going to get anyone on, get Liv.
Amazing. All right. Well, cheers, Henry. Appreciate you coming on. And there's definitely been some good advice in there. So people are really going to appreciate it.
Cheers, Joe. Thank you.